Live now to Ambassador David Satterfield, former US Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs. David, welcome to you. Thank you for being with us here on the BBC. The death toll is rising in Israel, and the IDF is now urging civilians in Gaza to evacuate as its military forces target Hamas. What are your greatest concerns about how this situation could escalate?
Well, let's look first at why Hamas chose this moment and this particular strategy. I think it's very clear there were long preparations made by Hamas, undoubtedly in communication with Iran and Hezbollah, given the personalities on all sides involved here. What was the purpose? I think the purpose was severalfold. It was first and foremost to obtain Israeli hostages, civilian and military, as many as possible, in order for Hamas to then be able to hold them for two reasons: as shields against a possible Israeli massive ground move, and secondly, as a means of getting Palestinian prisoners out of Israeli jails. Why is this such a critical objective? Why did Hamas's leaders take this enormous risk of a massive Israeli response? Well, I think they did so because, for their part, they wanted to demonstrate and demonstrate overwhelmingly to the Palestinian people, not in Gaza, but in the West Bank, that they, not Abbas, and not the Palestinian Authority, are the true revolutionary force that serves the interests of the Palestinian people. This is not new. This is an old Hamas motivation. But I think we have to look more broadly at the other regional motivations. With a Saudi-Israeli normalization deal, as it's been referred to, not done yet, but certainly something that's being quite seriously considered, such a deal is a challenge. It's a challenge to radical terrorist movements such as Hamas. It's a challenge to Iran. And both parties have every incentive to try to defer it or to put it off altogether. If there is a massive Israeli ground incursion into Gaza, and that is something which the movement of Israeli infantry on the ground tonight would suggest, then Hamas's hope is, and this is the bizarre, tragic reality of this situation, the more Palestinian innocents are killed, the better Hamas's interests and Iran's are served. So am I concerned about escalation? Yes, but the escalation is almost certainly going to be an escalation which targets innocents on all sides.
I want to touch on some of your point about other players, because you were ambassador to Lebanon at one point where Hezbollah has praised Hamas's attack. It said that it serves as a warning against recognizing Israel. Do you think that Hezbollah may use this moment of vulnerability to also attack Israel, and that we risk seeing a situation in which this conflict becomes more widespread?
No, I think Hezbollah's engagement now is of a different character. It is a potential guarantor, a sword, if you will, over Israel's neck, along with Iran, to ensure, if it can, that Israeli actions against Hamas in Gaza are limited. In other words, Hezbollah is not going to unilaterally move against Israel, I would assess. But if there is a massive incursion into Gaza, the threat is always there of Hezbollah rocketing, and that's something Israel would have to take into consideration.
Perhaps this is a difficult question tonight at this particular juncture, in light of the fact that we are seeing an unprecedented scale, at least in recent decades' memory, in terms of an attack. But what impact do you think that what we are seeing tonight could have on efforts to normalize relations between Israel and the Arab world?
Well, it's certainly Iran, Hezbollah's, and Hamas's attempt to thwart such a normalization. But I don't think it will work. I think that over time, the generators, the engines that push normalization forward will continue to operate. And one of those engines, quite frankly, is the threat to all the states in the region, Arab and Israel, from Iran and from terrorist movements such as Hamas.
And so I do want to ask you, with your expertise, what you envisage US Secretary of State Antony Blinken will be doing tonight. We know that he was holding a call with President Mahmoud Abbas, but of course, this is about Israel and Gaza. How effective do you think this kind of call can be, and how can the United States balance its approach and relations whilst giving its traditional support to Israel?
Well, I think the message and the diplomatic activity in which President Biden and Secretary Blinken, and for that matter, Secretary of Defense Austin, are engaged during the day today and probably for the next several days is first to register that the United States unequivocally supports Israel. The president could not have made that clearer. He was quite blunt. There is no question here of equivalency or balance, as those terms are sometimes used. This is support for an ally against a massive, calculated terrorist attack against innocent civilians. The other message, which they will be passing and working, is to try to ensure that all parties with influence in the Middle East exercise that influence to ensure that Hezbollah and Iran behind it do not enter this conflict. That is absolutely critical.
Ambassador David Satterfield, former US Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs. We thank you for your analysis. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.